Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ben's Football Vision, a new YouTube channel that will be focusing on different football topics around the world with an unbiased viewpoint and hopefully an eye-opener for all viewers. Now, I'm going to be focusing on a topic which is close to my own heart, England's national team. Now, I'm 26 years old and I'm used to disappointment, heartbreak, anger. I look back to my dad, for example, who's nearing 50. He's given up. An early memory with my dad watching England was in the World Cup 2006 when we played Portugal on penalties. And of course I was in tears, but I think for my dad, that was the end point for him. There's only so much disappointment you can take. However, you look to the modern England team, things have improved, beginning to break past stereotypes of the national team, earning respect, but yet still coming so close, but not good enough. So I'm going to be focusing on different topics regarding England, reasons why I think we haven't gotten over the line, and honestly, maybe even questioning whether we are good enough. Now, I'd like to start off by talking about one that I feel is extremely important, and that's simply England's DNA, the playing philosophy. Now, as a kid growing up playing grassroots football, your coaches would always look for you to play forwards. There was never really any focus on ball retention. When you look at the modern game, especially when we played against Spain in the final, it was very clear to see that just simply keeping the ball, playing football like a game of chess, that's how you can get success. However, people always look at the squad value. Declan Rice 100 million, Harry Kane 100 million, Jude Bellingham 100 million, and they think, well, that equals winning. But we all know that the modern game is inflated, and especially in England. It doesn't correlate to success at international level. Playing philosophy outweighs it all. I'm sure any England fan remembers when Rodri came off at half-time and it almost felt like we scored a goal. There was a feeling of belief. But a Spanish player is a Spanish player. And when they brought on Zubimendi, nothing changed. They still had control of the game. Now, we have excellent players, no doubt. You look at the likes of, as I've said before, Harry Kane, Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka. Very intelligent players. But they were born in England and they were all taught the same things. Of course, we're getting to a stage now where you have coaches from abroad come in. You look at the likes of Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta, even if you go back to Arsene Wenger. But the truth is, the countries they have come from are light years ahead of us. We try and play the way they play now, playing out from the back, looking to keep the ball, not always going forwards. Look no further than Jack Grealish. It was coached out of him what he had at Villa. And that was an example of where it doesn't go well. That's a player who's a maverick and should get the ball and do what he wants. But I'm more looking at midfielders, the number 6 position. When was the last time England had a number 6? Michael Carrick? You look at the likes of Adam Wharton, but they can't even get a look in the squad. We need to start focusing on what we are. If you look at England and its history, it's more like a 4-4-2, a big man up front, and a little man up front, being very hard to break down. That is, in the past, heavily what we've been. Not always, but that is an identity for sure. But now you see managers try and back threes, 4-2-3-1s, 4-3-3s. And as good as we can be, we're just not as good as the elite countries. Now, where do we also hurt ourselves? Playing players out of position. Look no further than the Euros just gone, with a left-hand side of Kieran Trippier left back and Phil Foden left wing. Now, Foden's not looking to keep the width because that's not his game. He likes to be in central areas. What happened from there? Suffocation in midfield, predictable build-up play, and as we see time and time again, we struggle to break down low blocks because everything's congested. There is no width. Width down one side but not down the other is not enough. You need to spread out the pitch. I'll use Spain as a reference again. Brilliant build-up play, but their wingers always stayed wide. Yamal and Williams, and they weren't told to look for a safety option. They were told to go and do something. Now, I'm not suggesting that England managers in the past tell their wingers not to do something, but ultimately, you've got to tell them to do things towards their strengths. Foden's strength, left midfield, it will never work. Technical player, but it will never work. You had players like Anthony Gordon. Okay, maybe not as technically able as Foden, but he can do the role needed in the team better, keep the width running behind. Look again at Euro 2020. People say Harry Kane's past it. He's not past it. The system needs to suit him. He's a goal machine. There was no issues in the past of Kane dropping deep because he had the likes of Sterling and Rashford running in behind. That is a system that made sense. So now we look at, for example, Tuchel coming in. Now, I'm not going to question him or say it's not going to happen. Of course, as a supporter of club or country, you always have belief. But Tuchel needs to implement something that works for us, plays to our players' strengths. Another topic I want to look into is, of course, the culture, the media. You know, I'm 26 years old. If I was a footballer playing for England at 26, I've heard it all. England are rubbish. We're never going to do it. And it lingers. And I do believe that, thanks to Southgate, the relationship with the media's improved. But then you've got the rise of social media, and players have social media. And, you know, if I was a player, I probably wouldn't, or I'd have a management team that does it, because I don't want to read things. They probably, after a good game, read all the positive comments and they're full of confidence. But when they have a stinker, I'm sure they delve into that as well. Now, for me, this is a smaller topic, but it does play a part. Pressure is immense. Having that England badge on is a lot of pressure. But ultimately, players need to remember they're there because they're good enough, and they've got to manage their own mindset in major tournaments. I look back to Italy. It was so frustrating how, for me, that wasn't a mentality issue. That was a management issue. If only we had a certain manager there, present, to guide us over the line, all this culture, media, it would have been blown away because it had been done. Victory had happened for the first time in 59 years. And that goes into my next topic, management. Now, I know I picked out Southgate there, and some will think that's harsh, and it is a bit harsh. But of course, when you're 1-0 up in your own national stadium, you've got to find a way to see it out. If we had gotten over the line, he would have been a hero. Because we didn't, he's not a hero. That is the nature of the beast. That is football. But he's not the biggest problem of them all. You look back to the FA, who, for me, the FA aren't very good. They make poor management decisions. They can do more, should have done more in the past, and now we're playing catch-up. Sam Allardyce, in what world should Sam Allardyce have ever been England manager? Fabio Capello, I think he struggled with English when he first came, broken English. Again, it was never going to work. But that's when it links back to our team is improving, because Fabio Capello for sure had a weaker squad than what Gareth Southgate had. You know, I look back at that World Cup squad that went to South Africa. You had, Ricky Lambert, people calling for Ricky Lambert to come on. So, hindsight is another thing, and certain managers, whoever may have been in, I don't believe would have gotten us over the line. But again, I just think the FA play it safe. But for the first time ever, in a way, contradicting myself, they haven't with Tuchel. They've gone against the English type role, and we all know how English managers are viewed in the modern game. I think Eddie Howe's the only one that I'd say is respected, but he's certainly not leaving Newcastle. That needs to change. We need to have better plans and actions for English managers. UEFA B, UEFA A licences are too expensive. We're pricing people out. May even be pricing out future England managers. Of course, ex-players, they can be signed onto it. They've got the money to do it. But when you look at history, Wayne Rooney, not a very good manager. Steven Gerrard, not a very good manager. Frank Lampard, maybe a little bit better. But again, we're talking about managing the England national team. Who can you imagine holding that World Cup, holding that Euros? That's English as a manager. Maybe Eddie Howe. But one option is not good enough. And when you start turning to other nations, again, it goes back to my point, we are miles behind. Last point I want to touch on is simply, Are we just not good enough? Are there always countries that are better than us? Maybe so. We talk about the golden generation team of Lampard, Gerrard, Wayne Rooney, Rio Ferdinand, etc. But at the same time, you had the Brazilians with all their talent. Do we over-inflate our expectations? Maybe so. But I don't think it's irrational. You've got players who are certainly world-class currently in this England team, and you think, can we not just do it? You know, Greece won the Euros on their own turf. Could that not been us in 2020? And as each tournament passes, you just think, is it ever going to happen? Are we just not good enough? I personally believe we are good enough. But of course, in tournaments, you need a bit of luck as well, because it's knockout football. All it takes is that one chance to go in, that one penalty not to be given. You know, we had luck on our side against France in that World Cup quarter-final when Harry Kane had that penalty, he skied over the bar. There's so many question marks surrounding the England national team. And when you look at the next World Cup, you can already see the excuses of it was too hot, you know, season's too long, etc. The excuses need to stop now. Do I expect us to win this World Cup? No, I think our chance was 2020. We had no right winning the Euros against Spain in the final. We were terrible. We did well to get to the final, but Spain were by far the best team in that tournament. If we had won the Euros in 2020, then we could have lived with the Spanish upset. But all it comes down to is frustration. You know, you hear the England national team and you think, it's just not going to happen. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is it down to playing philosophy? Is it down to players playing out of position, the culture, management? Or, as I said at the end, are we just not good enough?